everyone, it's Melissa, and today I wanted to share with you some of my favorite memoirs because it is nonfiction November, and memoir is one of my favorite subgenres of nonfiction, so I have 5 of my absolute favorites to share with you. I'm going to start with one that I just finished as part of this year's Nonfiction November, so it's still fresh in my mind and I am still thinking about it. And it's Dancing at the Pity Party, a dead mom graphic memoir by Tyler Fetter. So Tyler lost her mother to cancer when Tyler was a freshman in college. She was 19 years old. And I really loved this because it is very honest, but it also uses Tyler's brand of humor as a coping mechanism to talk about these things. So it does have some gallows humor. It does have awkward little jokes in there, which are fitting because she talks a lot about how sad it is after a parent dies, but also how awkward it is when you're talking to other people, especially when you're young and the people you're talking to have probably never experienced death before. So this is a great young adult graphic memoir, and it just has the right balance of humor and poignancy and sadness, and I highly recommend it to young adult and adult readers. The second memoir I want to talk about is Chanel Miller's memoir, Know My Name. Chanel Miller is the victim of the Stanford rape case, which was highly publicized. Chanel details everything related to the incident, the night itself when she was sexually assaulted, slowly coming to terms with that, and then the whirlwind of getting caught in a case that became highly publicized in the media, what it was like going to court, how long the process takes, and also the aftermath of that. It's enraging, beautiful, eloquent. Chanel Miller is a gorgeous writer, and she articulates everything so perfectly, and even if you've never had an experience even close to what she's gone through, she really puts you in that position, as close as you could possibly get to that position, to understand what the ramifications of that were and how far-spreading and how much they ripple out. The third memoir I would like to recommend is Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. This memoir focuses on the young men in Jesmyn Ward's life who all died very young in their late teens, early 20s. And the author basically takes you back to losing these young men, one of whom was her brother, and what happened, and really goes to the root of how these things were able to happen to these men. Jesmyn Ward grew up in Mississippi, grew up poor, and talks about how living in poverty as a Black American in Mississippi impacted her community, these young men. At first glance, if you're not Black and you look at the different ways in which these young men died, it's not really apparent what their race might have had to do with that. It's not like all of these men died from police brutality, for example. But the way the author brings you into the community, brings you into the reality of the systems at play, really shows how the fact that these were all young Black men led to them dying at such a young age. It is obviously a very intense and heartbreaking book to read, but the author injects this love into her writing that really shines through. There's a warmth and nostalgia towards her childhood and community, even when she underwent trauma as part of her childhood and trauma within her community. And I love the nuance of how she talks about those things. I don't know what else to say besides her writing is just beautiful, and it just reflected back a lot of pain, but also a lot of love and fond remembrance. It was a very bittersweet type of a book. The fourth memoir that I would like to recommend is Heavy by Kiese Laymon. This memoir looks at the author's entire life pretty much from age about, I think, 10 is when we start, through his entire adolescence, adulthood, going to college, becoming a professor, and him as a working professional. The memoir focuses a lot on his weight, as the title would imply, and the fact that he's a Black man. So the intersection of his size and race and gender really puts a target on his back, essentially. And he was large from very early on, so he was a big kid and looked like a man. And so you get this sense of the childhood that was robbed from him, how early he had to grow up, and how he had to walk through life. What makes this memoir, I think, unique is how it's written, the voice he chose to use. It is addressed to his mother. So throughout the memoir, he will say, you said this, you did this. And it's like he's recounting moments between him and his mother, and also sharing other experiences outside of that relationship to his mother. And it just really brought a sort of intimacy. I really felt like it was a wise decision for this memoir, because you can't really escape that. You can't keep his life distant and look at it academically. You feel like you are part of this, that he's addressing you, even though it's addressed to his mother. You're the one reading it, and I just think it worked so well in service to the messages that he was trying to get across in terms of his life story and the abuse that he faced and the things that he went through, and how that has shaped the person that he is today. Up till now, the memoirs that I have recommended have been a bit on the more intense side, so I thought I would end this recommendations list with something more lighthearted, maybe a tad frivolous, but I think full of just love and joy and fun. Editing Melissa here, popping in because I messed up the title of this memoir. It's As You Wish, Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride by Cary Elwes. Cary Elwes played Wesley in The Princess Bride, and if you are a fan of the movie, you would have already known that most likely. This is a very niche recommendation. Obviously, if you've never seen the movie, you aren't going to care about this book. It was so very heartwarming. Obviously, I had a lot of nostalgia wrapped around this movie. It came out in the 80s. It was very popular when I was a kid, and I've watched it countless times. So if that was also your experience, I can't recommend this book enough. But even if you aren't a child of the 80s and 90s, but still enjoy this movie, I would still recommend it to you. I think that the anecdotes are just really, really good. It seemed that the cast genuinely really liked each other and got along and had fun making the movie. This is a super joyful, just pleasant, lovely experience. I listened to this on audio, which was lovely because Cary Elwes has a beautiful voice, and it was just like Wesley talking to me. However, I know the hard copy has some pictures from behind the scenes on set, so I think either way would be a great way to read this book, and would highly recommend if you want something just heartwarming and a lot of fun to read. So those are 5 of my favorite memoirs. If you have any memoirs to recommend me, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of these books if you've read them. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care.